everyone, my name is Nicole, and if you're an incoming Msot student, I just wanted to share some things that I've learned throughout this program. So when I compare myself during seminar 1, like before level 2 fieldwork, to where I am now about to graduate, I can definitely see how much I've grown overall, not only as a student but as a future OT. In many aspects regarding like leadership, professionalism, and just an overall better clinician. Ultimately, my biggest advice, my simple piece of advice would be to just take advantage of every opportunity you get in the program and throughout your field work to learn, reflect, and just grow. You always want to grow and always learn. Anything regarding professionalism, growth, and identity, I feel like at the beginning of the program, I thought being a good leader just meant being like confident and responsible. But after my level 2 field work, I definitely realized that professional growth and being a good leader also requires being a good advocate, being a good critical thinker, having professional courage, being accountable and dependable, as well as having good problem solving skills. So those are a lot of the characteristics that I now feel like make a good leader. Some goals that I have achieved is becoming more confident in my communication. I feel like I was a good communicator with clients and caregivers, as we have that prior like quota like experience, but I feel that I always kind of struggled communicating and being confident when speaking to other professionals. I don't necessarily know if that's because I've always felt like kind of like the youngest person, so like what do I have to say, or like what do I know? So just being more confident in myself, and like my knowledge, and being able to just communicate better with others. I feel like that was a big goal I had, and that's something that I definitely improved throughout this program and in field work. I would also say like improving my clinical reasoning and just becoming more comfortable with assessments and interventions, things like that. I've also learned that well-being is a big part of being a successful professional. Graduate school, field work, it can all be super overwhelming. So I would say a piece of advice and something that I learned is to stay organized, create those boundaries with family, different or like your relationship, friends, things like that, because this is gonna take a lot of your time. It is a big sacrifice, but it's so worth it. So just make sure that you have your priorities straight, you're creating your boundaries, and take time to recharge when you feel like you need to recharge. But just know that going into this, it is a lot, and you do need to be ready for the sacrifices that you're gonna have to make. And like I said, it's worth it at the end of it. So just see the light at the end of the tunnel. But after graduation, I do plan to be like evaluating my professional growth. I would say every 6 months is a good timeline for me, with possibly like some informal check-ins throughout the year. But I plan to review like my clinical skills, my communication, my leadership, and my continuing education, which is very important. So being able to do these like 6-month check-ins will definitely help me with identifying my progress, where I feel like I'm still lacking, or where I feel like I need like additional professional development or like leadership development. And going into leadership development, I feel like the leadership style that I respond like most to is transformational and servant leadership. I value leaders who encourage growth, communication open and clearly, support others, and work towards one shared goal, which is a big aspect of OT. So servant leadership specifically focuses on supporting the development of others, which I feel like is a great type of leadership to follow. So as an OT student, I feel like I demonstrated leadership by taking responsibility for my learning, advocating for my clients, which was a great experience in my field work, doing like the peer-to-peer calls, because you really have to be open with communication and just kind of put like those big girl pants on and be a leader and speak up for your clients and advocate for them on why you're recommending this frequency, why they need it, and things like that. So I feel like that's something that I really valued and something that I learned. ultimately like communicating with team members, collaborating with classmates, and just being respectful overall. I also learned that being a leader doesn't always require a title. Sometimes being a leader is just asking questions, like being the first to ask a question, being the first to raise your hand, being the first to speak up, helping others without being asked, and like I mentioned, being a good advocate. To maintain my leadership after graduation, I would say that I plan on participating in a lot of like professional organizations like AOTA. I like to attend like a conference and things like that. Also, just completing like the continuing education. Always looking for knowledge gaps or topics that I'm interested in that I want like to further my knowledge in. And ultimately just looking for opportunities to receive mentorship or to give mentorship to future students would also be something really exciting. I also continue using the professional portfolio that we started in, I think it was OTH 3000, I think it was, like one of our first classes. But updating that with like my certifications, continuing education, accomplishments, reflections, like different things like that. I'd like to keep it all together and just being able to like reflect on all the growth overall. This would definitely allow me to track my growth and identify like any future goals that I set for myself. In regards to like NBCOT preparation, I think it's definitely changed a lot since pre-level 2. Before my field work, I feel like I focused on the time. Like I would hear people be like, study for 7 hours, study for 8 hours. And that just wasn't realistic for during field work when I wanted to study. So I focused mostly on like practice questions and just kind of studying like whenever I felt like I had time, which was very limited. So during field work, I realized that that approach was definitely difficult to maintain because of the workload in field work. So I would say like my updated plan is a lot more realistic to me and my learning styles. Like I said, you often hear like, oh, study all day, every day, like sleep, wake up, eat, and study. But it's just not realistic for me. And I really wanted to focus on a plan that was like well written out, worked for me, my learning style. So I'm really focusing on like the 8 to 10 weeks of studying and using NBCOT, using therapy ed to identify like my weak areas. I'm focusing on those. Being able to do the practice questions, review the content, what questions I got wrong, why do I understand why I got it wrong, and then just gradually like doing more, like building like my test endurance is a big thing for me that I like to work on and prepare for. But ultimately my goal in studying is being consistent rather than just studying for long hours. Like having good quality studying instead of just being like I studied for 8 hours and I didn't retain anything. So just being very realistic with myself, with how I learn, with how many hours I can actually sit and like lock in to retain the information is my main goal for studying. But I do have my plan written. I have like what topics I'm doing this week, what topics I'm doing next week, depending on like my strong and weaker areas. So I'm definitely excited to just dive into it, while also using the NBCOT and therapy ed that we have, which is very helpful. The NBCOT process does include like creating your NBCOT account, doing the exam application, having everything like your education verified, receiving your ATT test, like letter, so you're able to test, and then scheduling the exam. And then after passing, you need to like maintain your certification through NBCOT, and all that information can be found on NBCOT's website. Then once you do get your license, depending on what state you're in, there's a lot of things that you need to make sure like you know and understand. So for me in Florida, passing the NBCOT is like one thing, and then you have to make sure you have your Florida OT license through the Florida Department of Health and the Board of OT Practice. So Florida does require the applicants to meet the education and examination requirements for licensing. So once you're licensed, the renewal period is every 2 years, and that is required. And then you also have to do your continuing education with the Florida Department, like have that submitted to the Florida Department of Health. And this process is important because it's important to understand that your certification and your licensure is two different things. NBCOT demonstrates like your professional competency, but you need your Florida license to provide like legal authority to practice. So following these requirements, just make sure that everything is safe and ethical for your practice. So overall, just looking back from like seminar 1 to graduating now, I've definitely learned a lot about myself and about what kind of OT practitioner I want to be. And being an OT is much more than just having your degree. It's just knowing what kind of therapist you want to be, a compassionate one, a knowledgeable one, an advocate, and things like that. So I definitely want to continue developing as a clinician, a leader, and an advocate. So to any incoming MSOT students, good luck on your journey, and I hope you found some helpful information about this. Thank you. Bye.